Greetings all, I'm Aaron Mills and welcome back to the Riverdale vlogs. Now, as you probably noticed, this past season of Riverdale I didn't bother doing a vlog for each individual episode that came because, as I said at the end of the last season, everything that kind of got set up didn't really interest me enough to want to do that, and I was a little tired of having to watch the whole damn thing on my phone. So I decided to wait in this case. I kind of regret it. I've had a few minor things spoiled for me, which meant that this season got a little bit more interesting than I thought it was going to be. But I still haven't seen most of it. I don't know most of the major plot twists. I don't know anybody's character arcs. I know a couple of things, but not anything in context. So this week, Riverdale Season 2 hit Netflix. So I've decided to once again rip off Brad Jones and do a vlog where I will watch an episode, record my thoughts, and then we'll put it all together in one massive binge watch video. So this is the Riverdale vlogs for the entirety of Season 2. This is going to be a 2-day project. It'll be 2 days, but you'll get it all in one video. I'm hoping to, it is currently Saturday, May 26th. I plan on, from today and tomorrow, getting through all of Season 2 and then editing all this together on Memorial Day and hopefully getting it out to everyone then. So you're probably going to see my shirt change at some point, and I'll let everybody know when we're on to day 2 and all that. So let's get started as we begin the binge watch of Riverdale Season 2. Chapter 14, A Kiss Before Dying. So, obviously, we pick up exactly where the last season left off. Archie rushes Fred Andrews to the hospital. Fred spends most of the episode fighting for his life in some fairly good dream sequences where he imagines Archie growing up and whatnot and everything. As it turns out, that was not a random gunman. That was apparently somebody out to actually commit murder, because Pops didn't get robbed, none of the money was taken. But what is missing is Fred's wallet. Meanwhile, everybody else is trying to deal with it. Archie's naturally, you know, kind of on edge. Veronica's trying to be a good girlfriend but doesn't know how. Betty and Jughead are trying to deal with Jughead's new connection to the Southside Serpents, to the point, but Jughead decides to ask a couple of serpents to ask around and see if they can find anybody from Fred's old crew that he fired when Hiram Lodge put the squeeze on him. Veronica's mother, Hermione, is become even more of a bitch. She pretty much, you know, tells Veronica to straighten up and fly right, which means do what we tell you. Do what we and your father tell you, especially when he gets back home. Not a lot of stuff, you know, moves forward. This is, again, like the beginning of any story, this is exposition central. So a lot of it is cleaning up some of the loose ends from before. We find out that, yes, Jug will still go to Southside High, but he's worked out a deal with his new foster family, so they'll cover for him with the state, but he's going to be living at the Jones trailer in the trailer park. So this episode was actually really good. As it turns out, yeah, it looks like we got a brand new mystery on our hands. We have a man in a black hood who's apparently going around and killing people, and he's a serial killer. Because, yeah, at the very end, across the river in Greendale, no, it's not a Sabrina reference, that's not going to happen now that they're doing the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina series for Netflix. What's going to happen is, what happens is that Jennifer Gibson, aka Miss Grundy, is back. Briefly, apparently having started her old tricks up again in Greendale, and the killer kills her at the end of the episode. So there's that dangling plot thread taken care of. She didn't go far, but she was out of Riverdale, so whatever. So yeah, and then later Jughead goes back home and he finds the two serpents. He asks to look into finding anybody with another guy that they had beaten the hell out of, and they believe that, you know, it was just tall talk and that the guy was just bragging about shit, and they took care of it, and they just wanted Jughead to know that he's a serpent whether he wears the jacket or not. So he's kind of stuck now, and they wanted him to let his dad know that they're doing what he says, so yeah, so a lot of interesting things, a lot of things set up. Hiram Lodge has finally come to Riverdale. And we'll see what happens, because neither he nor Hermione seemed all that thrilled with the idea that Fred actually pulled through. Fred did pull through. And Archie has decided that he's going to protect his dad, like to the point of sitting up in the house in the middle of the night watching all the doors. So we'll see how that'll go for him. Again, Archie Andrews is not a thinker. Archie Andrews is a doer. And, you know, I really wish... One of the things that's just funny as hell is just this series keeps trying to sell us on the fact that these kids are all sophomores when quite clearly they're all in their 20s. And, you know, sometimes that's fine, you can get away with that, but then they deliberately put in, they make mention that Archie doesn't have a driver's license yet, and then there's a later scene where Archie's getting cleaned up, and Veronica gets in the shower with him, and it's just like, oh, for God's sake, quit trying to, just don't specify what grade they're in. Please, don't do that. You're not fooling anybody. And you're making it weird. Anyway, so those are the initial threads, and we're going to go back and go watch chapter 15, and we'll see where things develop from there. Oh, one other thing I forgot. Yes, Cheryl. Cheryl's still out of her goddamn mind, and her mother has been burned horribly. At first, you make it seem like, you know, Cheryl's claiming that the fire was an accident and that her mother rushed in to save her, and that's how she got burned, but I thought for a second that maybe Cheryl had just thrown her in the fire, but apparently her mom ran in to get the family portrait off the mantle, and that's how she got burned, and now Cheryl's threatening to kill her mother in the hospital, and just basically saying she's in charge now, and... Wow, Cheryl's going to be a wild card this season, I can already tell, because, yeah, she was already kind of out there to begin with. She's gone completely off the deep end now. We'll have to see what happens, because everybody's like, Cheryl, you're being real fucking creepy, Cheryl. Cheryl. All right, now chapter 15. Back with the next one in a minute. Chapter 15, Nighthawks. With the attempted murder of Fred at Pop's Chocolate Shop, the restaurant is in danger of closing. Nobody wants to help because this is Riverdale, and everybody wants to just hide anything bad that happens under the covers. So Betty tries to organize a fundraiser to save Pops. In addition to other things, F.P. Jones is facing 20 years as part of a deal to go to prison, which leads Junkhead to ask the Serpents for help once again to figure out a way to try to help him. They put him in the direction of Penny Peabody, who is apparently a former Serpent, but is also their attorney. She suggests that if the Blossoms were to forgive F.P. for his part in Jason's murder, that might actually cause some leniency. Of course, all these plans immediately go awry. Additionally, more problems with the lodges, with Veronica not being able to trust her parents, and as we'll see, with good reason. Oh my God, a lot to go on here. Meanwhile, Archie's slowly losing his mind, constantly flashing back to the killer and what happened at Pop's and whatnot. And basically, we also find out that Reggie, who finally has a larger role in this, it's a new actor playing Reggie, but he seems to have a pretty good handle on it right so far. Reggie's a drug dealer. So, one of the things in here, it's like he can get pretty much almost anything, and apparently the drug of choice in Riverdale these days is a thing called Jingle Jangle. Not entirely sure what it is. It's definitely an upper of some kind, and possibly with some Viagra mixed in, given some of Reggie's dialogue. Which is funny because Jingle Jangle is actually a song from the 60s by the Archies. So, yeah. Some of the ways they're working the Easter eggs in are just delightfully stupid. And it's great. So, Archie wants the drug, gets drugs from Reggie. Reggie, being Reggie, shows up wearing a black hood. Archie nearly pounds him to death, and Reggie points out, hey, listen, you're not going to get him. He's got a gun, Andrews. You know, you're going to be, only a crazy man brings a baseball bat to a gunfight. which again comes into play later. Archie gets this, after hearing about Miss Grundy's death, gets suspicious that, starts to suspect that maybe the killer is targeting him and people he loves because of the affair he had with Miss Grundy and his dad and all that. He goes to and he thinks it might be Miss Grundy's ex-husband. He talks to the sheriff. The sheriff says, no, we talked to her ex. He's got an airtight alibi. Veronica tries to, get some help from her mom by showing the letter that Hiram wrote while he was in prison, implying that if Veronica didn't testify on his behalf, Hermione would be dragged into it. Hermione says that she's the one who wrote the letter and it was to trick Veronica into testifying. And, they keep trying to make inroads and go back, but Veronica's not having it. There's actually a pretty decent scene with Veronica and Jughead where Veronica asks how Jughead came to forgive and support his father, and he said he was making an effort to be better. He said there might be a possibility your dad's doing the same. So Veronica decides to give them a chance. Now, to get both things that Jughead wants, to get what Jughead wants and what she wants, Betty, as I've said, there's a point, Betty is sweet and nice, but there's a point you're going to push her and she's going to push back. So Betty goes to Cheryl and basically says, listen, either you and your family testify on FP's behalf and get me the River Vixens over to help with this fundraiser for Pops, or I'm gonna put the video of your dad killing Jason all over the internet. We still have a copy. So in exchange for that, Betty agrees to give Cheryl a copy of the video and delete any other copies that they have. So at Pops that night, the Lodges show up. The Lodges show up and they make nice with Veronica and say they're going to give a triple donation and whatnot. And so does Betty's mom. And Alice, once again, can we please find something other than Alice being a self-righteous bitch for a characterization? But regardless, she's there to write about the end of Pops and all that. And while she's there, she notices, one, some of the Southside Serpents show up, and two, she spots Reggie dropping off drugs in the parking lot and gets pictures, which leads her to be really, really bitchy at the end of the night when, when saving Pops is successful. She's just like, you are aware there were several drug deals that went down tonight, right? And the Serpents have crossed the tracks and now have a toehold in the North Side. So congratulations, Betty. You've almost single-handedly given crime a safe haven in Riverdale. Fuck off, Alice. You fucking... Oh, God. Hate Alice so much. It's like 1 minute she's helpful and the next minute she's queen bitch of the universe. It's like, again, parents in Riverdale, except for Fred Andrews, are horrible. Parents are horrible people in Riverdale. So... as it turns out, that wasn't a donation that the Lodges gave. Without telling Veronica, the Lodges actually bought Pops. And in exchange for Pops keeping quiet, he's allowed to stay on as the figurehead for the entire place. On top of that, Penny Peabody did not have... FP calls Jughead afterward and says, you talked to Penny Peabody? Did you pay her? And he said, no, she said it was a favor. It's like, don't reach out to her again. If she reaches out to you, ignore her. You do not want to be in bed with a snake charmer. Which means that there's probably some really shady shit that Penny's up to, so I don't think we've seen the last of her. Oh, by the way, Penny, played by one of my favorite actresses of all time, Britt Morgan, from The Middleman. She's Livewire on Supergirl. She's amazing in everything. I love Britt Morgan to death. Now, that seems to be everything. Like I said, I'm going through this stuff really, really quickly. Oh, and to culminate, Midge Clump, Moose's girlfriend, comes to Reggie at the beginning of the episode asking for Jingle Jangle. Reggie gets it to him, and they're going out, and she and Moose are going out, go out and make out, and the hooded killer shows up and apparently kills both Midge and Moose. Lovely. Great. So Midge and Moose, the cutest couple in all of Archie comics, are fucking dead. That's great. That's just wonderful. Oh boy. If they're not careful, they're not going to be able to keep this series going for long, and they're going to kill off most of their supporting cast. Alright. So that is that. That is that episode. This episode, actually pretty good. A lot of stuff moving forward. It's nice to see that Archie is actually, actively involved in what's going on as opposed to coming in at the tail end with everything else, which again leads me to believe the whole Miss Grundy plotline got aborted a lot sooner than they were planning after the backlash. So, Season 2 shaping up pretty decently. So, I'm going to step out, we're going to look at the next episode, and then we'll be back. Welcome back. Chapter 16, The Watcher in the Woods. Things start to escalate rather rapidly. First off, Kevin is spending his nights out, spending his nights running in the woods and trolling for guys, and because he doesn't think he has any other options, and Betty tries to stop him from doing it. That does not go well. Cheryl happens to overhear them having a conversation about it, and, tells Betty that Kevin still sees himself as the nerdy little fat boy he used to be when he was younger, before he got himself in shape. And, Betty still tries to dissuade him, and Cheryl comes along just being Cheryl. But when Kevin won't listen, he goes to Kevin's dad, who tells him what's going on. And basically, that's more or less right now, Kevin and Betty's friendship is on the outs. Oh, yeah. Moose and Midge survived. Moose shielded Midge, so she didn't get shot. Moose got shot, so he's in the hospital right now. Pretty sure things... And then things get even more escalating when the Black Hood leaves a letter on the Cooper's front doorstep, along with Miss Grundy's sunglasses and Fred's wallet, with a letter saying that he's going to cleanse this town of sin. And so, yeah, basically that's what's going on there. He demands that his letter be published. The mayor and the sheriff try to dissuade him, but it's already gone to they've already put it on the front page and it's going to the press. This causes Polly to freak out and leave town up to the farm where she and Jason were going to go in the first place. So, yeah, I think they've effectively written Polly out of the series, at least for this season. We'll see what happens later. Oh my god. Meanwhile, Veronica is trying to get into her dad's good graces, and it's just having this sort of thing. Her mom's being kind of a bitch to her for trying, and it's just, hey, parents in Riverdale are horrible. Okay, let's just make that a drinking game. Anytime a parent in Riverdale does something horrible and shitty, just take a drink. You'll be drunk by the end of episode 3. One thing I forgot to mention from the last episode is that Archie got a gun from Dilton Doily, and he's decided to start this sort of neighborhood watch thing, focusing specifically on Riverdale High and its students, which he calls the Red Circle, which is the imprint name of Archie Comics' superhero line. Again, actually, the killer, the Black Hood, it's named after another Archie superhero. It's funny as hell. Anyway. So Archie gets all the football team together, and Dilton and a bunch of others, and they go out on night patrols and out there. And so Archie and Reggie are out on one particular patrol when we see Ethel. Don't worry, the actress who's playing Ethel is not getting the same treatment that she got as Barb in Stranger Things. Ethel sees this van come by, and it keeps passing her, so she calls Archie, and Archie gets there, and the van passes by him and drives off. And all that. In the meantime, Jughead is... sticking with Archie, sorry. So, alternately, Veronica introduces her parents to Betty and Kevin and Jughead and Archie, and Hiram invites Archie to dinner later that week, which they do. And he takes Archie into his study where Veronica and Hermione are not allowed to go. Whatever. And he starts talking to him and gets the idea that he needs to put the fear into the killer, that Archie's militia needs to... Militia, they use that quite a bit. The sheriff's not happy about this at all. Surprisingly, Mr. Weatherby promoted backs him on it. So why he did it, who knows. Anyway, so Hiram encourages Archie with what he's doing, but wants him to up his game a little bit, which he does at the end by putting a video on YouTube, threatening the killer. All the other guys, all the football players are there shirtless and wearing red hoods, and Archie's there with his face exposed and all that crap. Threatening the killer, who of course is watching. We don't see who it is, but of course it's watching. Meanwhile, Jughead starts school at Southside High, and there's a lot of gangs at Southside High. Aside from just the Serpents, there's also a gang called the Ghoulies, who apparently are the ones that are dealing in the harder drugs that Cliff was passing out. Because as we all know, FP said that the Serpents don't deal in hard drugs. Well, the Ghoulies gang does, so apparently the drugs were coming from whoever was supplying Cliff to the Ghoulies, who then distributed, and of course Jingle Jangle is also in there. We get another Archie character introduced, Tony Topaz, who is also a member of the Serpents, and Sweet Pea, who is just kind of a junior member of the Serpents, and another character from the Little Archie comics. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure some of the other gang members we've seen, I'm sure at least one of them is Fangs Fogarty. I know he shows up at some point. I just don't know who he is just yet. Anyway, I'm still waiting for Katie Keene to show up. They're not going to go this long and not have fucking Katie Keene show up at some point. I'm waiting for Katie Keene. Please, Riverdale, give me Katie Keene. Anyway. Oh God, I'm losing it. Anyhow, so Jughead manages to convince the advisor on the Southside High paper, the red and black as opposed to the blue and gold, to open it back up. He reads some of Jughead's articles and gives him the okay, but he can't talk about gangs or drugs in the paper. He can't do it. But that's how Jughead puts together the connection that the Ghoulies are the ones distributing the harder drugs throughout Riverdale. So yeah, there's a lot of things getting started in here. And then basically right at the tail end, Veronica says she wants to take a more active hand in Lodge Industries since she's technically a shareholder, and Hiram agrees. So I don't know what the hell Hiram's up to. We'll probably find out as we go, but yeah, Veronica is skirting that line again, and we'll see what happens. We got a mention of Dark Betty again, but we haven't really followed up on that or what the hell is going on as far as that's concerned. If anything, like I said, it might have been something they were thinking about doing, but just kind of abandoned or just making a passing reference to it, or it might come into play later, who knows. But yeah, a lot of interesting things happening in this episode, and I really liked it. And now we're going to move on to the next chapter of Riverdale Season 2. Back in a second. Chapter 17, The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Basically, things escalate in this episode. Archie gets in trouble for the red circle in the video, and as a result, he's told he has to disband. The group. Veronica doesn't let him and expands it even further. Archie finally comes clean to Veronica about what he actually wants to do. Is he wants to find the Black Hood, and he wants to kill him, and he wants to be the one to do it. To the point that he takes the gun and goes and starts spray painting red circles all over the south side, where he encounters the Serpents, specifically Sweepy and the other Serpents who run at Southside High with Jughead. And Archie waves the gun around and scares him off, which later causes the Serpents to show up at the Andrews house while the parents are at the town hall, about the Black Hood and all that. So there's a big honkin' fight between the football team and the Serpents. And Dilton is there as well because he's a member of the Red Circle, and he gets stabbed in the leg. And basically, as Reggie's rushing him to the hospital, he tells him that says that he's going to report that the serpents jumped him for no reason, which isn't going to help things because tensions between the North Side and the South Side in Riverdale are rapidly approaching a boiling point. Not helped by Alice again with all her nonsense. In other news, things escalate because the Black Hood sends a letter directly to Betty, which pretty much he spells out that it's because of her speech at the end of last season, which is why he started doing this, taking her message and twisting it to his own end. So Betty feels terrible. He also sends a Zodiac Killer style cipher to her as well. Now the cipher goes public, but the letter doesn't. Betty keeps that to herself and only tells Kevin because she doesn't want anyone blaming her for the Black Hood going around. More specifically, she doesn't want Archie blaming her for the Black Hood being out and around. So after a bunch of working on it, they crack the cipher and find out that the Black Hood says he's going to strike again where it all began, which would be where the speech was, which was in the City Hall auditorium. Jughead and Betty show up, and they manage to get everyone out, and nothing really happens. Veronica, Archie sends Veronica to get the gun because, they start, naturally, the sheriff and Mr. Weatherby investigate Archie's locker. They don't find it. He hid it in one of the toilet tanks. So Veronica got it. She used the gun to break up the fight, and then the two of them threw it into the river after all was said and done. Yeah. Goddamn, things are escalating quickly. And in the lodge department, pretty much Fred's trying to keep everything together, so the lodge and Hiram says, well, maybe we can use that, since Fred's usually crusading all the time. So, yeah, and then to top things off, right at the end, the Black Hood calls Betty. And that's where the episode ended, so we'll get to that in just a minute. We'll get to that here in the next one. This one, it would seem to strongly imply that the Black Hood knows a lot about the Cooper family and about Betty in particular, because to crack the cipher, it required Betty to find a book she used to check out all the time as a kid. So the Black Hood knows a lot about Betty, which is really, really disturbing. So yeah, not entirely certain where it's going to go there. Could this be to the unknown? Could the Black Hood possibly be the unknown Cooper sibling that was given up for adoption? Maybe? Perhaps? Don't know. Possibly. So, yeah. So there we go with that. So yeah, I think things are moving along nicely. A hell of a lot more relevant. It's nice that the mystery is the central focus, other than all the other kind of side stuff that was going on in the first season, and having Archie actually involved in what's going on helps too. So yeah, right now, I'm sorry I wasn't doing this as it was airing, because I'm actually very engaged right now. So let's move on to the next episode. Back in a minute. All right, next episode, When a Stranger Calls, and it's an appropriate title. Oh my god. So, yeah, the Black Hood calls Betty, and he cuts a deal with her. Basically, if she does what he asks without telling anybody, he will answer questions for her. And the first thing that he asks her to do is he managed to get a hold of a headline which pretty much exposes Alice as a Southside Serpent, which we all kind of inferred from season 1, but get confirmation here. Betty's originally not going to do it until, Alice decides to be Alice about the South Side and bitch about Jughead and all that, so she goes ahead and publishes it, and it's all over the place, and Alice apparently thought she was able to get rid of all those copies, but nope, there's still one, which again, still seems to point that this guy knows a lot about the Cooper family. Meanwhile, The lodges are hosting an open house for the Sodale project and hoping to get investors because they're running out of money. And it just so happens that some old friends of theirs, the St. Clairs, are in town, and their son, Mark, is a friend of Veronica's from her party girl days. And so he shows up and pretty much, tries to get everybody to do drugs and party and all that and everything, and constantly putting Riverdale down and all that jazz. This collides with Betty's plot line. Pretty much he throws a party. One of the things, as soon as Alice is out and he asks the question, he says, "Would I recognize you?" He says, "Yes." Then basically, the Black Hood is blackmailing Betty into doing what he wants to do because he says if she doesn't do it, he'll kill Polly and the babies and all that and everyone she cares about. So that's how she gets her to do it. And basically, he starts telling Betty to cut people out of her life, starting with Veronica. So at the party that Mark throws, which has Archie, Veronica, Betty, and Josie and the Pussycats and Reggie, after the drugs start going, Betty goes off on this epic rant against Veronica and leaves. Archie tries to figure out what the hell's going on. Betty tells him what's going on, especially after the next time that he calls, he tells her he wants her to cut Jughead out of her life. Jughead himself is having his own problems because he's discovered that he can't sit on the fence with the serpents anymore. Pretty much, thanks to everything that's happening, the north side and the south side, the tensions are boiling over and the serpents are ready to just rail against the south side, which they've apparently been wanting to do for years, but it was FP who kept everything in check. So Jughead decides to join the serpents fully in order to try to alleviate things. So his whole arc throughout this whole thing is going through the various initiation process and developing his friendship with Tony. Next, so after Betty gets the call to cut Jughead out, she tells Archie what's going on, and she asks him to do it, and Archie goes over and just gets there right at like the worst time possible because Betty's idea was to let Jug down easy and something they could walk back. Well, Archie shows up at the same time that the serpents do for the last phase of Jughead's initiation, and Archie takes things the wrong way, and so basically just blows up the entire relationship between Betty and Jughead. And so Jughead just throws himself into the serpents. He gets through the initiation, and he and Tony kind of kiss, and now who knows where that's going. Meanwhile, after the party, Mark decided to put the moves on Veronica. She pushed him off. They apologized to each other and all that. They said they could restart and just write off the whole night at the open house because Veronica's still trying to get the money, get his parents to finance the Sodale project. After that, Cheryl shows up at the open house, and Mark roofies her drink. Yeah, he's that kind of douchebag. So once the drugs take effect, he takes Cheryl up to her room. Fortunately, Veronica was on stage performing with Josie and the Pussycats at the time, and all four of them notice what's going on, and they chase up. And they get in, and they get there just before he's about to do anything. And in one of the best scenes I've seen in this series so far, Veronica and Val and Melody just beat the ever-loving shit out of Mark. During all this, Betty gets another call after the Jughead breakup, and the Black Hood tells her to go to this old abandoned house. And so she can see who he is. And there's a box on the floor, and inside is another Black Hood. He tells her to put it on and turn around, and of course she's staring into a mirror because it's like, I want you to see that we're the same. And why is this relevant? Well, after she goes to the house, she calls Archie. Archie tells her to get over to Veronica's place because of what happened to Cheryl, and she finds out, and she hears the whole story on that. And then that night, the Black Hood calls her again. And, basically he says, we have a piece of unfinished business. You've been sharing our conversations with Archie. And so basically he says, that's it. I'm going to go kill your sister now, and then I'm going to kill your mother and your father and everyone you care about, unless you give me another name. And Betty's conflicted, and all of a sudden, just once again, I think now we're getting back into the dark Betty stuff. Just a complete 180, and she's just like Mark Sinclair. Mark Sinclair. And it's like, that's where the episode ends. She gave him the line, and he's like, I told you we were the same. And so that's where that particular episode ends. A really good episode, because I like these kind of little mind game kind of episodes when we have a serial killer on the loose. I like that. And all the subplots work, and they're all tied together, and they're interlinked really well. This is actually a really good episode of it. I mean, sure, it's all melodramatic as fuck, but it's a show on the CW, for God's sake. So, yeah, let's see what happens to Mark. Next episode, back in a minute. Alright, Chapter 19, Death Proof. Yeah. Alright, so, as it turns out, the Black Hood does not kill Mark Sinclair, and basically just used it as a test of Betty's fortitude. But there's a collection, but the fallout from the party with the jingle jangle and all that, all the parents are there, and basically once Josie admits she took it, Mayor McCoy goes ballistic and decides to raise the South Side, including a raid on Southside High. Most of the serpents are arrested. And as a result, that cuts down their numbers, which lets their rival gang, the Ghoulies, try to make a play to get in. Jughead tries to figure out a way to deal with that and try to get things back in order before the Ghoulies take over the gang completely, because if that happens, then that's it. Game over. Everything's lost. He and Archie try to figure it out, and they go to FP, and FP says that the Ghoulies love street racing, so they challenge. So Jughead challenges this Ghoulie leader to a street race. Basically, if Jughead wins, the Serpents stay autonomous, and they get control of Southside High. The Ghoulies get out, and there's no more drugs there. If the Ghoulies win, they take the White Worm, which is the bar that the Serpents hang out in, and the trailer park where Jughead's currently living. So that's how that's going to work out. In other news, basically the Blossoms and the Penelope Blossom and the Lodges work a deal with the Sinclairs for hush money, so they'll keep it quiet about Mark attempting to rape Cheryl. Cheryl's not taking it well, but compartmentalizing like crazy. It's like crack, crack, crack. Every time you see her, you just see the cracks forming. On top of this, the Black Hood instead tells Betty that he wants her to find the identity of who's the major dealer of the drugs. Who was Clifford Blossom selling the Jingle Jangle to? Who's Clifford Blossom selling the drugs that ultimately became Jingle Jangle to, and who's distributing them out to the gangs? This is an entity known as the Sugar Man. And Betty goes and starts searching, and she starts making amends with everybody. She makes amends with Veronica, and Veronica helps out with that, and it all kind of culminates together. Cheryl does her own thing. She finds out about the payoffs to keep that Penelope took to keep quiet. Finds the check and tells her mother that she's not getting the money until she tells Cheryl exactly what's going on. And Cheryl got turned on to this by Betty asking about the Sugar Man. Yeah. So the street race happens, but it turns out that Archie called the cops ahead of time, and so now the Ghoulies have all been rounded up and arrested. But the problem is that that doesn't solve the problem permanently, because once they're out, they're going to be out for blood. Specifically Archie's blood, and probably Jughead, since it's still believed that Jughead was... Since some of the serpents still believe that Jughead ratted everybody out to the cops on this. As far as the other plot lines go... excuse me, sorry. As far as the other plot lines go, when Veronica finds out about the hush money from Cheryl, she goes to the lodges and tells them that Mark tried to do the same thing. Well, that pissed off Hermione and Hiram quite a bit. And they say they won't take any of the Sinclair's money for the Sodale project, which they don't. What happens is they were somehow the Sinclairs were in a mysterious car accident, and Mark's going to take several months to recover. Veronica's response? Oh well, karma's a bitch. Yeah, I'm hoping this is turning out to be more of a long game to bring her parents down in some shape, way, or in some form by Veronica, rather than Veronica turning evil. God damn it. Ugh. So, after the race, Cheryl manages to get the truth out of Penelope, that there isn't one Sugar Man, there has been many, and it's been taken over. And she knows who the actual Sugar Man is, and so she tells Cheryl. Cheryl tells Betty. Betty does not tell the Black Hood. She tells him that I've already called the cops, and you're just going to have to read his name in the expose. Well, pretty much, yeah, it turns out that the Sugar Man was actually the lit teacher who was the advisor to Jughead on the Southside High paper. So, yeah, yeah. So he gets arrested, much to Jughead's dismay, because he was looking at him as kind of a mentor type thing. And then ultimately, yeah, the Black Hood manages to break into the jail and kill him. And that's where that episode ended. So yeah, another good one. I'm liking this. This is a much more tightly written storyline throughout. There is no wasted things. They've kind of stopped with the everyday high school crap and are focusing more on the actual dealings of what they say this show is supposed to be. So it's working out pretty well. So let's move on to the next chapter. Back in a minute. Holy shit. Wow, that was a good one. This might actually be my favorite episode of this series as a whole from both seasons so far. Chapter 20, Tales from the Dark Side. Now this one's actually kind of fun because unlike all the other episodes where everything weaves in and out, no, 3 storylines, 3 separate stories told individually that link up like a Tarantino film. That's kind of the way they ran it with it. So, the episode starts when the Black Hood puts a letter on the front of Pop's Chocolate Shop and says he'll be watching Riverdale for 48 hours, and if they can remain pure and not sin during that 48 hours, he'll stop killing. Well, life doesn't quite work like that. So to start off, we have Archie and Jughead. Jughead gets a call from Penny Peabody, who pretty much tells him that his dad's been in a knife fight and he's been gouged up really bad, and that they need to get him out, and if he has the cash, they can move things forward. Well, Jughead only has about $18 to his name. So Penny says, here, do this job for me and I'll see what I can swing, which, you know, was kind of the thing that FP was warning Jughead about in the first place. Basically, he has to take a crate from Riverdale to Greendale and get it there before midnight. Because apparently we don't want to be in Greendale after midnight. Because there's witches about, but that's coming later, I'm sure. I'm sure that the Sabrina series that they're developing for Netflix will probably have a couple of backhanded references to Riverdale at some point. Okay, so Archie and Jughead get the crate. So Jughead asks Archie's help. They get his truck, and they go get this crate, which we don't know what's in it. We don't know who they're delivering it to or whatever. And they have a tire blowout on them. Well, they can't. They have to call Triple C, as it were. but this old man, played by Tony Todd, the Candyman, shows up. They load the crate on the back of his truck, and they go through, and he starts telling Jughead this story about the Riverdale Reaper, who apparently years ago did more or less the exact same thing the Black Hood's doing. That he thinks the Black Hood is the Reaper, and pretty much it all goes fine and dandy until they get to a diner, and then the guy kind of goes bananas and refuses to pay at this diner. They paid for gas, like he took Jughead's money and used it to pay for gas, and Jughead can't pay for the food, but Archie fortunately shows up before things get weird, and because the old man says he's going to leave him here and take the crate with him and all the rest of it, and it's just like, and so Archie shows up, pays for the food, and they get the crate back into their dad's truck, and they take it. And they take it to the place and meet up with this apparently Russian gangsters. I don't know. One woman who looks like Ma Fratelli. They go out there. They deliver the crate, and basically the woman says that Penny had said that he's going to be the regular delivery boy now. He said, no, this was a one-time thing. I mean, which one of you is Jughead Jones? How do you know my name? Well, they know who you are now, jackass. Well done. So, knowing that they're kind of screwed, Jughead goes to Penny, and Penny pretty much implies that FP did something that pissed her off, and he still owes her, and that as far as she's concerned, FP's debt is Jughead's debt. So Jughead's kind of stuck working for her for right now until he figures out a way. So yeah, Jughead's getting dragged further and further into the world of the serpents, and it's not fun. Then the episode ends with the two of them at Pop's, and Jughead, and then their story ends, and Jughead goes off to see his dad in prison. We'll get back to that in a minute. Second story is Josie. Josie is working on some songs, and she has a secret admirer who's been leaving gifts in her locker and all sorts of stuff like that. And Cheryl manages to get Josie some studio time, but they don't want the Pussycats. They just want Josie. So Josie's kind of been working in secret to be a solo act. Of course, her mom's flipping out because she's everywhere. Chuck Clayton returns in this episode, and apparently he's trying to turn over a new leaf. He says he's been taking art classes and going to church, and he's trying to make amends, and he and Josie kind of hit it off and all that. Of course, Cheryl doesn't believe he's changed and tells Chuck gives Josie a ride home after school, and they stop at Pop's, and her mom shows up and says that, and drags her home because she wants her home before dark, and it's after dark and all that. And she doesn't want her anywhere near Chuck. And then Josie gets another gift, which is a sketch of her that says, "If I can't have you, no one can." And she opens up the box, and there's a pig's heart in there. And so they all think it's Chuck, and Cheryl reams Chuck out, and nobody believes him that it's not him, and all that. So it's all taken care of, and everything's fine and dandy, and then we cut to it, and yeah, it turns out that it's Cheryl who's Josie's secret admirer. I don't know if she just wants control of Josie with the solo career, or if Cheryl actually has a thing for Josie. Maybe? Who knows? But yeah, Cheryl's kind of been behind that one. And then the last one is, of course, Betty and Veronica. Betty's trying to figure out who the Black Hood is, and her theory is that it's Sheriff Keller, because how else could the Black Hood have killed the teacher from Southside High in his own cell? Veronica, on the other hand, they're both talking to Kevin. Kevin's been saying that his dad's been acting strange. Veronica just figures he's having an affair. So they both investigate with Veronica feigning a sleepover at Kevin, and Kevin's a huge nerd. Kevin is a huge nerd. He's got like a D&D style board game and whatnot. And Veronica's like, okay then, yeah. And Betty's doing her own investigative work, trying to prove that Sheriff Keller's thing. Apparently the Black Hood pried the door, one of the back doors open, and the deputy had fallen asleep, and that's how the teacher was able to be killed. So Betty gets on the phone with Veronica while she's at Sheriff Keller's, and there's a lot of locked doors in the house, and she gets her to go down to the basement, and as it turns out, in the basement is Sheriff Keller working out with weights. Sheriff Keller's ripped. Seriously, like seriously ripped. And it turns out that in the comics, Kevin's dad is actually a soldier. Well, in Riverdale, his mom is the soldier. So she's out in Bahrain is where she is. So that's why we don't see Kevin's mom around, is because she's a soldier and she's on active duty. So, so later, Betty gets into Kevin's house and finds the sheriff's private office, which of course looks exactly like it did in the first season with the Jason Blossom murders. Murder board, articles and everything. Well, she takes it the wrong way. She finds a Black Hood in his drawer, which he took from Archie, from which Reggie had pranked him earlier in the season with it. But she jumps to immediately the wrong conclusion. And the sheriff doesn't press charges. He's not going to say anything to it. He just sees that it's a big misunderstanding. And then it's immediately right after that Betty and Veronica are staking out the Keller house because Veronica had seen Sheriff Keller leave in the middle of the night, and so he does it again and goes to a motel, and Betty thinks it's his next victim, but it isn't. It turns out that Sheriff Keller's having an affair with Mayor McCoy. So that's what happened with that. And then, so all three of these stories resolve at Pops. And, we see what happened, is it with Cheryl being all neighborly with Josie, and Betty and Veronica talking about their stuff. Jughead leaves to go visit his dad, but his dad's perfectly fine. It turns out Penny lied. And that's when he has this confrontation with Penny, and she ropes him into the servants even further. Just as Jughead leaves, a phone call comes to Pops. It's the Black Hood, and he basically says, "We failed. We're all sinners." And he's not going to stop. And that's where the episode ends. This was a really fun... I'm guessing this was the Halloween episode. Because there's a few things that happen. Like Archie, while he's waiting for the Triple C truck, and after Jughead drives off with Tony Todd, there's like a half-skinned deer that wanders across the road. I mean, it's three really nicely creepy stories with like this... late 70s, early 80s horror anthology vibe. It's a really good episode, and I really enjoyed it. So, yeah, it's fun. If nothing else, just watch this episode if you haven't even seen Riverdale. Just because these three stories stand alone. Yeah, there's stuff about the Black Hood, but it's bookending, and you can just watch all of... This is a fairly self-contained episode. You can watch this episode without having seen anything else, and it would be fine, because it gives you everything you need to know at the beginning and everything you need to know at the end. So, yeah, good episode. Really good. I really like this one. Let's move on to the next. Back in a minute. F.P. Jones gets out of jail and basically decides to go straight, getting a job at Pops and everything else. So Betty and Jughead decide to throw him a retirement party with the Serpents when basically he kind of gets no respect at all from anybody, least of all Cheryl. We get more of Cheryl apparently making a play for Josie. Also, while Jughead and Betty are busy with the party, they ask Archie and Veronica to look into the Riverdale Reaper murders, which basically took place at the same house that the Black Hood sent Betty to. So, in the meantime, Archie tells Veronica that he loves her, and that freaks Veronica out, and that's kind of their big subplot thing, so they throw themselves into investigating, which was a family of 4 that got murdered. But they eventually find the case files, which went missing for a while and turned out to be in the house. and it revealed that there were actually 5 members of that family. And it turns out the 5th one is Svensson, the janitor, because he was adopted by the family, by his family. And yeah, and they talk, and pretty much Archie is sure that he's not the Black Hood, because he looked him in the eyes and doesn't think that that's in the case of Svensson. At the party, Betty goes through the female serpent initiation ceremony, which is basically a pole dance. Archie and Veronica try to work the thing out. Archie tries to use reverse psychology on Veronica. It backfires, as it does, because it's Archie. And the two of them end up breaking up. And speaking of things backfiring, the retirement party backfires when FP announces that he's not quitting the Serpents, and that he's going to go back to them. And when Jughead asks him why, basically he reveals that he knows that Jughead got in under Penny's thumb, and so basically he's in, Jughead's out. And as a result of that and Betty's performance, Jughead has it out with Betty. So Archie and Veronica break up, Betty and Jughead break up, which ends with a scene of Archie and Betty looking at each other through the window, which means we might actually get the Archie, Betty, Veronica love triangle going here soon. Excuse me. Sorry. One other thing, Svensson at the end of the episode is looking at a picture of him and 4 other guys, so it might be possible that one of the guys in that picture is the actual Black Hood. I guess we'll just have to see as we go. So this one, yeah, dealing with the various threads that were dangling from the previous episode and putting in a few new monkey wrenches besides, but a fairly straightforward episode, well acted. Skeet Ulrich is great as a FP as always. We get a little bit of Alice's backstory. FP tells her to come to the party because she used to be a serpent and all that, and yeah, she throws herself in, and it's fun. It's a fun little thing. So yeah, not as good as the previous one, but not bad either. So that's that episode. On to the next one. See you in a minute. Next episode, Silent Night, Deadly Night. It's Christmas in Riverdale, and Fred has an $86,000 hospital bill he's staring down the barrel of. So he and Archie start selling Christmas trees and whatnot. And other things are happening throughout the whole episode, but we're going to kind of focus on one thing at a time. Pretty much, we start off with, people seeing gifts and whatnot, and ultimately, Jughead, we'll start with Jughead and FP. Jughead and FP are still arguing over this. Jughead's trying to help his dad out of the bind they have with Penny, but FP's not having it, and Jughead finally decides to do something about it. He gets the younger serpents involved, and they go and they abduct Penny, haul her to Greendale, and Jughead has a damn Jughead moment, because one of the laws of the serpents is you can't attack your own. And Jughead just takes off his jacket and says, Penny, just because you have that tattoo doesn't mean you're a serpent. And he takes a pocket knife and he kind of cuts it right off her. We don't see it, but I was just like, damn, Jug! Wow! That pretty much, seems to get him and FP out of it. I'm sure there's going to be repercussions for that down the line. And all that. Of course, everything's awkward Christmas-wise between Archie and Veronica and Betty and Jughead because of the breakups, but they still got Christmas gifts for each other. Veronica makes a discovery. First off, she asks her parents for the money to pay Fred's medical bills. They say no. She goes ahead and does it. And she says no, and she does what she always does. She goes and she snoops in her father's office for her father's study for the Christmas presents, but she finds something else as well, the deed to Pop's chocolate shop. And that's when she just goes ahead and decides, all right, screw it, and pays Fred's medical bill with their American Excess black card and all that. And so when they get back and they find out about it, which they do because the bank confirms that anything that big, any payment that big, they pretty much, Veronica demands to know what the hell they're doing, and they say, okay, fine, but the time for being daddy's little girl is over if you do this. Unfortunately, we don't know exactly what they're doing yet. It's edited. The next time we see Veronica and her parents, it's after they've explained everything. And Veronica basically says, I'm not going to do anything illegal. Which they say, well, you need to learn the term plausible deniability. And yeah, whatever. And she says she wants the $86,000 charge to pay Fred's medical bills to stand. Hiram objects to begin with, but Hermione steps in and says we can smooth it over and we need Fred for the next phase. I don't know what that phase is. I have no clue whatsoever. On to the murder. On to the Black Hood case. Basically, first off, Svensson goes missing. And later, Betty gets a finger delivered to her from the Black Hood. And basically, it says that this is from the sinner, Joseph Conway. Find the primal sin and expose it, and you might be able to save his life. So Betty and Archie are now on the case. And they go looking around, and they just go to back to the Sisters of Mercy where Polly was staying. And after Betty once again employs the blackmail she does, saying she'll tell them what a house of horror, tell the public what the house of horrors the place is. Basically it's reported that what happened was Svensson, when he was a kid and the only survivor of the massacre by the Riverdale Reaper, may have pointed the finger at the wrong person. And that person, basically, 5 guys went out and killed him and buried him, and 5 guys went out and killed him. And basically there was a bunch of people, it was just 5 guys, but there was a whole bunch of Riverdale citizens, and the Sisters of Mercy pointed out it's a woman with white hair and a cherry red streak, who turns out to be Nana Rose, Cheryl's grandmother. Who still apparently thinks Betty is Polly. And she mentions it, and she says that they didn't hang him. No, they buried him alive under a tree that looks like the devil's hands. And as it turns out, one of Betty's grandfather, Lewis, was one of those people who did that. So Betty goes through a bunch of his old photos and finds the same one that Svensson was looking at, of the 5 guys under the tree, and there's a big old mound of dirt right there. Yeah. So they go to the tree. So Archie and Betty go to the tree. They call Sheriff Keller, and they go to the tree, and they find a grave marker for Joseph Conroy Svensson, and they dig it up, and there's an empty coffin in there, and it turns out it's a trap. The Black Hood is waiting for them. He forces Archie into the coffin, forces Betty to start burying it. But at that point, just before, no sooner does she get started, then there's sirens in the thing. It distracts the Black Hood long enough for Betty to just smack his ass down with the shovel and drop his gun, and he goes running off. Archie gets out, and they chase him down. Archie grabs the gun, and the guy's trying to make a break for it over the bridge. Archie's about to shoot him, and there's a gunshot that goes off, and fortunately, Sheriff Keller is the one that shoots him and not Archie. And they take the hood off, and it's Svensson. It's apparently, the Black Hood was apparently Svensson. I mean, he cut his own finger off to send to Betty. And that seems to be that. Everything seems to be wrapped up in a nice, neat little package for Christmas. Yeah, this was an interesting episode, and it ended with Betty starting to burn all the stuff she had from the Black Hood case. But she stops herself because she's got this feeling that maybe this isn't over yet. And there's still a good chunk of episodes left to go. This was only episode 9. So there's 9 out of 22. So yeah. So we're not done yet. But we'll see what happens. So that was Christmas in Riverdale. Merry Christmas! So a couple of things I forgot to mention from the last episode. Ronnie and Archie got back together, and somebody was photographing them. Well, it turns out they were photographing Archie specifically, because at the beginning of this episode, Archie gets recruited by an FBI agent who is after the lodges, and is pretty sure something's going on. And from the agent, Archie finds out what happened to Mark St. Clair. Archie then comes up with an excuse and goes to Cheryl, who basically, uses Cheryl as a cover story in order to, well, hang on, I'm getting ahead of myself. The first major thing that happens in this episode is Southside High gets shut down thanks to manipulations by the lodges and the mayor, which means all the kids get relocated to other schools. Jughead and several of the other younger serpents, including Tony, Sweet Pea, and Fangs Fogarty, get sent to back to Riverdale High. Unfortunately, this does not sit well with some. While Veronica, Archie, and most of them try to make them welcome, Cheryl gets into the act because she discovers that her mother is working as a high-class prostitute. And high-class independent prostitute, and that's how the Blossoms have been making their money now. Of course, that doesn't sit well with Cheryl either, and she's like, my home life is a Dickensian nightmare. I refuse to let school be that one too. So she ropes in Reggie and a bunch of the other cheerleaders and whatnot, and, they ruin things, and there's confrontation and whatnot and everything. And then no sooner does that happen than, Reggie pretty much fakes a gang sign being tagged on the school seal, which causes Mr. Weatherby to say no gang paraphernalia, which means they can't wear their jackets in there. Jughead doesn't take well to that. And the next day comes in and he's immediately suspended for wearing the jackets, and that's just one of those things. And then it gets even kind of worse because, well, anyway, I'll keep going with Jughead. Jughead gets suspended, he goes back to the White Worm, and his dad shows up, and they have a talk, and his dad says, listen, all you gotta do is lie low. You think I want... And yes, his dad is still working at Pop's. So, you think I want to scrub toilets and flip burgers? No, but it's what I gotta do. You're not shedding your skin, you're lying low. So, so basically Jughead goes back the next day, the usual stuff we've seen him wear, and it turns out that Veronica had an idea of a donation for nicer clothes so they fit in more. Well, that got translated into uniforms. And it's only the serpents who have to wear them. Fun. And, Jesus. So it's like either wear the uniform or you're gonna get kicked out. So that's what happened, and which sucks. It's just stupid. It is so stupid. I mean, it's like it went from one extreme to the other. And like I said, it's only the serpents who have to wear the uniforms. All the other students, they can wear whatever the hell they want. It's ridiculous. Teen dramas, what are you gonna do? Anyway. So Jughead gets the idea and he forms an official club, the Sword and Serpent Society, which allegedly is meant to be like a D&D club, but it is actually just someplace where they can actually just be themselves and be serpents and all that. So that's what Jughead's big plot line was in this. Now, while the conflict was going on with the serpents and Cheryl, basically Reggie and Cheryl were trying to bully Veronica and Archie into flipping sides, but they didn't. And Archie wanted to talk to her about Mark St. Clair and what happened to her, and says he can get the money from the check that they burned back and get more money out of him besides. And Cheryl decides to go along with it. And Archie decides to move forward because Cheryl tells Archie that Mark tried the same crap with Veronica. And so Archie borrows one of Jason's blazers, goes all the way up to Mark's prep school, gets the check, Mark baits him, and Archie beats the shit out of him. Keep in mind, Mark has both legs broken. So yeah, Archie kind of goes bananas and breaks his nose and beats the shit out of him. So, shit, Archie! And yeah, and then he brings the check back to Cheryl, but that backfires because Cheryl gives the check to her mother and says, well, you can stop now. And she says, why would I want to stop when I'm having so much fun? Meanwhile, Betty decides to take it upon herself to locate the missing Cooper sibling, which she manages to do. His name is Charles Smith. He goes by the name of Chick, and he's, you know, he's a male prostitute, basically. You know, Hal's not thrilled about it, so Betty and Alice go and see him, and he kicks him out of his room and all that. And then later, Betty decides to go back and catches him as the landlord in his place is roughing him up, so he brings him back. So she brings Chick back to the house, and they decide to let him stay. But that might not be a good idea, because the last thing we see before the end of the episode is Chick inside Betty's bedroom staring at her while she sleeps. Kind of creepy. Archie and Veronica go back into all this, and they get it all worked out. Cheryl tried to blackmail Archie by saying she saw him and Betty kissed her the night they caught the Black Hood. Archie came clean with Veronica about that, and Veronica said okay, and everything was fine because he was being honest about it, so that lifts that weight off of him. But he still goes back to the federal agent, and he basically, you know, this is basically arranges things. It's like, I'll do this, I'll help you take down the lodges, but I want my dad protected, I want Veronica protected, I want it in writing, which he got. And then he asked the agent, in your professional opinion, do you think we got the right guy on the Black Hood? And we don't get an answer. It cuts to a different scene after that. So yeah, again, things are moving at a pretty brisk pace. There doesn't seem to be a lot of wasted episodes this season like there was in the first season. I think they kind of got the hint that everybody was more interested in the mystery than all the usual teen drama nonsense. I mean, it's still got the teen drama nonsense, but it doesn't seem as omnipresent as it was in the first season. So, yeah. This is Saturday, like I said at the beginning of this video. I'm going to go watch one more episode today. That'll be episode 11 of Season 2. That'll bring us to the halfway point. And that'll be the last one I watch tonight, and then we'll tackle the other 11 episodes tomorrow. So, be back in a minute. Next episode, The Wrestler. So named because Archie takes up wrestling in this episode, but we'll get to that in a minute. We're going to start off with the Coopers and Chick. Obviously, Hal is not happy that Chick is in the house. He's constantly saying that he's taking Polly's place. Alice couldn't be happier. Betty's just trying to figure things out. Chick himself isn't sure what the hell's going on. And Kevin reveals that, yeah, I mean, if you're paying attention to when Chick's introduced, it's obvious. He's a cam boy. He does webcamming to make money and to try to escape from the hell that is his life. Chick's convinced that there's got to be some strings attached to all this, and so he's very standoffish and kind of, yeah, the whole time. It turns out that his landlord sold all his stuff, so Betty gives him an old computer so he can continue his webcamming and all that and everything, and things kind of come to a head. It's Founders Day in Riverdale, a bit, essentially Pickens Day. It's named after General Pickens, who founded Riverdale, but we'll get into that in a minute. So Chick comes up to Betty and asks her what the deal is, and she says she's hoping that, she can figure out why she is the way she is with Dark Betty and all that. And, at the Pickens Day celebrations, Hal comes up and says that he finds out what Chick's been doing, and he has to leave, and Alice says, I threw you out once before, I will do it again, and the other thing is that Hal says he has to leave, and you know why. So I'm pretty sure that in all likelihood, Chick may not actually be Hal's kid. Could he be FP's kid? Maybe, but who knows. Nothing really to go there on that one either way. So after the Pickens Day confrontation, Penelope Blossom spots Hal and says, "You could use a real dessert and some company, and I don't have anywhere to be." So who knows what's going to happen with that? I'm sure we'll find out in the episodes to come. Jughead. Now, apparently, this whole uniform thing was temporary because all the all the Serpent kids at Riverdale hire regular street clothes now. So, I don't know, maybe abandoned plot line. I don't know. Pretty much, Junkhead decides to write an article for the Blue and Gold about, he has an oral history report, basically, and he decides to talk to Tony's grandfather, who is the oldest living Southside Serpent in Riverdale. And he tells him the story about how basically the Serpents kind of came out of a tribe of Indians that used to live on the land, and then reveals that General Pickens actually slaughtered most of those Indians, and Native Americans, excuse me, slaughtered most of them. The Ukenna? I can't remember the name, sorry. Anyway, but General Pickens was hired to do so by General Bartholomew Blossom, Cheryl's great-great-great-grandfather. And so basically, yeah, and that's how the Blossoms came to power in what became Riverdale. Jughead publishes the story. Tony gets angry because pretty much this was, ever since becoming a Serpent, obviously, Jughead's had a chip on his shoulder about the North Side and the general attitude that that the South Side is expendable and the people who live there don't matter and all that. So, but Tony calls him out on it and says, "This was not your story to tell. This was not meant to be part of your vendetta." So, Jughead goes back to Tony's grandfather and apologizes, and they stage a protest on there saying that, reparations must be made and whatnot, but Hiram Lodge does some fast talking and manages to defuse the situation. And that pretty much is where that ends on that score. And then, as far as Archie goes, Agent Adams insists that he gets into Hiram Lodge's inner circle to try to figure out what's going on. Well, Archie finds out that Hiram's into wrestling and wrestled for Riverdale High when he was a teenager. So Archie tries out for the wrestling team, and there's this big thing throughout his entire arc about him trying to get in there and Hiram not approving of him and basically just saying, "You'll never win," and all that. And it just got to a point where they reached a state of detente where he basically said, "Listen, I'll tell Veronica, I gave you some training, we went for a run, we broke bread together, and I will tolerate you for as long as this lasts." And then on the last day of the wrestling tryouts, Archie manages to take down Chuck, who's actually in a higher weight class than Archie is, and that sufficiently impresses Hiram enough to offer Archie an internship, basically. Because now it's just as personal now for Archie as it is trying to help out the FBI. So yeah, and then I gotta get back to Betty. At the end of the episode, Chick comes in and shows her webcamming. So basically, it looks like both Archie and Betty are stepping into the darkness a little bit, and we'll see where that goes later. So yeah, that's pretty much it. A lot of character development, a few things moving forward, but not a lot. One thing that does happen at the end of the episode is that the statue of General Pickens in Pickens Park is decapitated and vandalized, and pretty much the lodges pretty much say they want it handled with extreme prejudice, and they're pretty sure the Serpents did it. So who knows what's going to happen? We'll see in the next episode. But that concludes the Saturday edition of the Riverdale Vlogs for Season 2. We'll be back in the morning to continue with the remaining 11 episodes. See you in the next one. Alright, welcome back to Day 2 of the Riverdale Vlogs. This particular episode, again, I've completely forgot to note the title. Chapter 25 is what it is. It's Veronica's confirmation, and so she's holding a big party, and a whole mess of Hiram Lodge's business associates are coming as well. Which, of course, gives Agent Adams of the FBI incentive to get Archie involved in getting intel on what's going on. Archie's been working as Hiram's intern and running around running errands and whatnot, and basically asks Archie to attend his poker game the night before the confirmation with his business associates, which will be held at Pop's, just filling drinks and so on and so forth. Veronica is not really thrilled with this idea because she's trying to keep Archie innocent, pretty much. Hiram basically tells Veronica that she's going to have to make a decision whether to bring Archie in, or keep him out. And that's how that's going to work. At the poker game, Archie happens to overhear two of Lodge's business associates, they're all mobsters. Let's just come right out and say it. They pretty much come out and say it in this episode. Hiram's a mobster. So, yeah. Anyway, here's two of the other mobsters talking about how they think Hiram's gone soft while he was on the inside, while he was in prison, and how he's letting his wife run everything and all that, and they don't like it, and they're thinking of staging some sort of coup on the Sodale project. Archie goes and he tells Hiram what's going on, and Hiram makes a phone call, and then later that night, Agent Adams shows up at Archie's house, drags him into the garage, and tells Archie that one of the gangsters, the one who was instigating the coup, was found dead, shot in the back of the head in his hotel room. So, and asks Archie if he heard anything that might indicate what was going on, and Archie, God damn it, Archie. Archie lies and says no, he didn't hear a damn thing because he wants to stay with Veronica. So he's getting pulled further and further into this, not realizing, being the dope that he is. Again, Archie Andrews is not a thinker, of the potential problems that's going to cause. Meanwhile, the case of the decapitated statue is having some severe problems because Mayor McCoy uses it as a pretense to more or less evict the Southside Serpents out of the trailer park. And there's a lot of them because some of them apparently owe back rent. And that's apparently illegal somehow. They only have 2 weeks to vacate. So when Junkhead gets some ideas and tries to go to the Serpents for help, turns out that Penny's back! And she tells the rest of the Serpents exactly what happened and what Junkhead did to her. And, yeah, that's problems there. And so everybody gets angry at Junkhead because they figure his article was the problem and things have been going south since he became a serpent and all that. And basically Penny says, I can help, but I want back in, I want him out, and I want to cut his tattoo off with a dirty knife. So yeah, so FP gets mad at Jughead, and there's going to be a vote whether or not to keep Jughead in the Serpents or not. He goes to Betty, tells her what's happening, and Betty agrees to help Jughead try to find the head of the statue. So they put up some flyers around town and all that. And they finally get a call from a guy who has a scrapyard out on the edge of town, and he found the head of General Pickens. So they got it back, and he asked if somebody was going to be there, if he was tall, and it turned out to be Tall Boy, the tallest member of the gang, and also the second in command, who's kind of been really kind of bitchy ever since Jughead came into the picture. And yeah, so Betty and Jughead bring the head back to the White Worm. And pretty much, yeah, the Tall Boy's outed in there, and they vote to kick him out of the gang, and I don't know, maybe something else. I don't know if he said, me and this piece of trash have a long ride ahead of us. So it's like, okay, what the hell? And ultimately, they end up sending the head back to the lodges, because it turns out Hiram Lodge hired Tall Boy to stir up trouble, just to in there. So Hiram Lodge is making a play for the South Side, all of the South Side, because not only that, the sale is finalized and they now own the land South Side High is on. So yeah, they're doing something. In fact, Veronica tries to tell Archie what they're up to, but Archie tells her he doesn't need to know, he doesn't want to know, he's there for her. So again, god damn it, Archie. Alright, so that's those two main plot lines. Third one has to do with Chick and the Coopers. Yeah, Betty started webcamming. She doesn't appear to be getting naked or doing anything. She appears to be an online dom. That's kind of weird. But we only see that for a split second. And yes, the dark Betty wig returns. So, yeah, I don't know what's going to go on with that. Anyway, she comes home one day and finds that Chick finds a guy coming down from upstairs, and Chick's in his bathrobe, and basically he says that was a job interview, and he's got a job at the theater. And then later, Hal moves out because he doesn't want to live under the same roof with Chick, so he moves out and goes to a B&B, and then while Betty and Jughead are dealing with the General Pickens thing. Oh, yeah, and sorry, I skipped a little bit. Yeah, Betty and Jughead finally have sex. They've been leading up to it, but now they're explicitly, yeah, they've been having sex. Oh, well, whatever. Shipping galore. Who gives a shit? Shipping is a plague. I've said it before. I'll continue to say it. Shipping is a plague. So after that, anyway, so when Betty finally gets home, she comes home, just before Betty came home, I'm sorry, somebody shows up, some guy with blonde hair and a beard shows up at the Cooper house. Alice answers the door, is like, hi, is Chick home? And when Betty comes home, she finds that that particular guy is dead, apparently bludgeoned to death with a lamp, and her mother's cleaning up the blood. So the question is, who brained this guy? Was it Chick, or did Alice actually kill him? Oh my god. Yeah, so a lot of weird ass shit going on in Riverdale. Wow, this season is kind of ratcheting things up. I don't know how this is going to end well for anybody once all's said and done. I really don't. In fact, given everything they're doing, I mean, if this show keeps going, when this show ultimately ends, I don't know how they're going to resolve everything so everybody who we care about gets a happy ending. Oh my god. Alright, so that's that. On to the next episode. See you in a minute. Holy shit. Okay, next episode, The Telltale Heart. Before I talk about this episode, let me just say something. I like this show, but it's getting really goddamn ridiculous. It's just getting so ludicrously... It's turned into a mob movie. It's bizarre. Alright, first things first, let's talk about the Coopers. So it turns out Chick was the one who brained the guy in the living room, so Betty and Alice flip out, they clean everything, they hide the body in a sewer pipe, and leave him there and all that, but of course Betty's guilt-ridden as hell. So she goes back, gets the guy's phone, tries to find out if he has family or anything, and the only person she finds is apparently the guy's girlfriend, who tells her to fuck off and all that. Alice keeps acting like everything's normal, which isn't helping Betty any either. I can't remember if I mentioned this in the last one. Hal is having an affair with Penelope Blossom, and Cheryl finds out about it, and she tells Betty, this turns out to be kind of a good thing, because Hal keeps coming back to the house, and is suspicious because he smelled bleach when he showed up looking for because he forgot some toiletries and whatnot, and so he comes back and starts interrogating Chick, and Betty basically tells him, listen, you either leave or I will tell Mom about Penelope Blossom, about you and Penelope Blossom, and that gets Hal to buzz off, and Cheryl wants Hal to break it off with her mom, and all that. Ultimately, with everything that's going on, Betty asks for Jughead's help and tells him what's going on, and while they're talking, turns out the dead man's car has been parked across the street from the Cooper house for the last 2 days. So they hotwire the car, they get rid of it, they dump it in the river, and a great moment where it looks like the car won't actually sink in the river like they were hoping it would, but it does, and they toss the phone in after it. Then Betty goes to, then after Hal shows up at the house and interrogates Chick, and Betty threatens to tell Alice about Penelope Blossom, she tells Alice that they need help. There's too many loose ends to worry about, so they go to FP. Jughead has told FP everything that's happened, so FP takes over. He grabs the body, he buries it with a bunch of lye. He says pretty much in a week nothing will be left, especially even his teeth. So yeah, the body gets buried, and now they got a big secret in there, and there's a bit of a tender moment between FP and Alice. So once again, I'm pretty sure they had a thing back when Alice was a serpent. So, wow. Next, let's see. In other news, the other major plot line that's going on with Archie and all that, Archie starts getting pressured by Agent Adams to get some actual information. He starts suspecting that Archie's not telling him everything, so he starts pressuring him. Archie tries to feed him some false information about the murder of the other crime boss, and Agent Adams gets suspicious, so he starts putting pressure on Fred, saying that the FBI is interested in if he's using undocumented labor from Canada, paying people under the table and whatnot. And so then Archie goes to Agent Adams and confronts him, and Agent Adams basically says, you're feeding me false information, which means you're compromised. So what you're going to do is you are going to plant a bug in Hiram Lodge's study, or I'm going to make things really, really difficult for you and your dad. Archie decides to destroy the bug and tell Hiram Lodge. He does, and tells him the name of the agent, and he says Arthur Adams will be dealt with. Give me 24 hours to make some calls, and I'll get back to you. And then that night, Andre, the new doorman at the Pembroke, because Smithers has been replaced for reasons, Andre shows up and says that the boss wants to see Archie, so he drives him clear out to the cliffs on the outskirts of Riverdale, and it turns out it's not Hiram who wants to see him, but Hermione, and she basically tells him that that Agent Adams isn't actually with the FBI, she was one of Hermione's capos, and basically this whole thing was a test to see if Archie could keep his mouth shut. And she passed, and welcome to the family, Archie. That's where the episode ends. There is one other thing. Pretty much, there's some sort of falling out between... there's an attempt by Veronica to negotiate between the Serpents and Hiram Lodge. And the problem is that everything seemed to be okay, except that... basically, Hiram asked Jughead in this expose he's writing on what's going on the South Side to keep Hiram's name out of it, and Jughead disagreed. That causes the lodges to want to move up the timetable for whatever it is they're doing at the Sodale Project, but the mayor doesn't agree, and she refuses to cooperate. And their plan was to leak that, Mayor McCoy's been having an affair with Sheriff Keller. Well, Veronica goes to Mayor McCoy to begin with and tells her that's exactly what's happening. And as a result, Mayor McCoy steps down from office, which, stymies the plans and all that. I mean, Mayor McCoy's out, but it also means that now they have to get a whole new election and get new inroads with whoever's the mayor. So Hiram goes to Veronica and says, "Did you happen to warn her?" "No, Daddy, I did not." And basically, yeah, so that's where we stand right now. Like I said, this is turning into a friggin' mob movie, and I'm having a hard time seeing how anybody's going to get out of this. Because now, officially, all four of our main characters, Archie, Betty, Veronica, and Junkhead, they're all fucking criminals. They're all criminals in some shape, way, or form. I don't know how any of this is going to... And remember, you're all supposed to be sophomores in high school. That's the silly thing about it. Like I said, this series is fun and I enjoy it, but it's getting really, really goddamn ridiculous. Anyway, so on to the next episode. We'll see you in a bit. Next episode, The Telltale Heart. This one's actually kind of a lighter, funnier episode. Basic idea is that Hiram Lodge is having some sort of business meeting with the families of New York and has Archie take Veronica out to their cabin out at Shadow Lake. He also suggests they take Betty and Junkhead with them. And the four of them go out there, and there's a few fun little bits, especially about their sex lives and all that. Each couple gets interrupted by the sound of the other one having sex with bed springs. You need new bed springs out of that cabin, Ronnie. And there's, they talk about the various kisses because Cheryl tried to invite herself along with them, and they said no, it's couples only. So Cheryl told Jughead about the kiss that Betty and Archie had, and they talk about that and everything and all that. And for the first half of the episode, it's just primarily focusing on that, and it's kind of light and funny and silly and fun and all that and everything. I'll get back to that in a second. Meanwhile, in the B plot, Josie finds out about Mayor McCoy's affair with Sheriff Keller, and it turns out that her parents are getting a divorce because McCoy wants to stay with Keller and all that, but everything else. So, and then that, but that Kevin and his mom don't know about the affair yet. Oh, one thing I keep forgetting to mention, a few episodes back, Josie attempting to go solo actually got back to Val and Melody, and the band broke up. And which is sad, really, because Melody actually had lines for once. Mel had lines, no real personality, but she at least spoke, unlike last season. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. I don't know what they're planning on doing with that. So anyway, Josie goes ahead and tells Kevin about the affair. Kevin himself is having problems because he doesn't have a boyfriend right now. Moose is with Midge, and Moose keeps trying to get Kevin to do things with him and Midge, not like sex things, but it seemed like maybe Midge just wanted to get it on with two guys at once, but no, it seems like Midge has absolutely no clue that Moose is bi. God damn it, come on. Focus and stay that way. Jesus Christ. Okay. Anyway, so Josie tells Kevin that, and there's big drama and whatnot, and later, Mayor McCoy says, that was a choice you took away from them, and it wasn't your place to tell them, and Josie realizes she was in the wrong. She runs into Kevin at the movies, and they work it out, and then they get their parents together, and the four of them start talking out what's happening with all this. God damn, just focus. Anyway, next thing. Also, obviously Cheryl and her mother are still on the outs, and her mother, for fuck's sake, stop pissing me off. Autofocus. Alright, anyway. So Cheryl and her mother are on the outs, and her mother keeps telling Cheryl that she's just this heartless, loveless beast. And we actually get more insight as to why it is that Penelope keeps treating Cheryl like crap, and it's not just because she set the house on fire. Basically, after Cheryl tells Jughead about the kiss, it turns out that Tony was in the bathroom at the same time that Cheryl told them, and Tony tries to make inroads with it. And yeah, as it turns out, because Tony runs into Cheryl again at the movies because they're by themselves, and they're seeing Love, Simon, which is about a coming out and a coming of age story and a coming out story. And yeah, pretty much what got implied heavily during the Tales from the Dark Side episode is confirmed. Yeah, Cheryl's gay. Cheryl is gay, which explains quite a bit. We don't see her dating. We don't see anything like that. Turns out she was in love with her best friend in middle school, and her mom found him in the same bed one night and told her she was deviant and awful and horrible, and Cheryl kind of internalized that. So, and it looks like they might be pushing things with Tony and Cheryl. I mean, Tony and Jughead shared a thing at a makeout session, but the day after, Tony was like, yeah, you know, that was nice and all, but I swing more toward girls. So, yeah, so we might be getting a thing with Tony and Cheryl coming up. Who knows? We'll see. Back at the cabin, Jughead gets news from his dad that the thing at the trailer park has been resolved, and it turns out that Hiram Lodge went ahead and bought the trailer park and canceled all the debt and the eviction notices. So everybody gets to stay, which is fine, but Jughead's already immediately suspicious that he's trying to buy Hiram, because he did publish that article about it. So that he is trying to, you know, buy Jughead's silence, which everybody thinks he's being a little bit nuts and seeing conspiracies where they're not, until Betty gets a call that Hiram Lodge bought the register. And of course, Archie and the four of them get into an argument over it because, you know, everybody's got their own loyalties to their own people. Veronica and Archie are loyal to the Lodges, and of course, Jughead and Betty are loyal to their parents. So, you know, nothing really gets resolved with that because some of the locals around Shadow Lake break in and try to rob the place. And, you know, they try to rob the place, they're starting to leave, Archie chases after them, and it turns out Andre, who was told to buzz off, didn't. Veronica hit a silent alarm in the bedroom when they went to get her wallet. And, you know, Andre pretty much killed the guy. And then later, back in Riverdale, Hiram talks to Archie and asks him what happened to, yeah, they were all wearing black ski masks, so Archie was having, like, flashbacks to when the Black Hood nearly killed him. So, when Hiram asked him if what Andre did to the guy bothered him, Archie pretty much says, you know, my biggest regret is that I hesitated with the Black Hood to protect my dad. And he said, and Hiram tells him, when you're protecting yourself or your family, you can't ever hesitate. So Archie's getting pulled deeper and deeper into Hiram Lodge's world. Again, I'm not sure how this is all going to shake out at all. So, yeah, again, re-goddamn ridiculous, but yeah. So that's where we stand. This episode was actually a lot of fun. Yeah, you know, things move along with the plot lines and all that, but, you know, we get answers about Cheryl, although once again, this show is schizophrenic. It's like, are we supposed to like or hate Cheryl? Make up your mind. And we get some moving along with Josie and Kevin. A lot of supporting characters get some time in this one, and that's really cool. And, of course, just the general vibe of, you know, Archie and Veronica and Betty and Jughead hanging out together was fun, too. And the darker aspects didn't really take away from that. So this was a really good episode, and I enjoyed it. Some people might say it's filler. Maybe it is, but it's needed after a lot of the stuff that's been happening. All right, next episode. See you in a minute. Next episode, there will be blood, and boy howdy is there, when all things kind of come to a head. Jughead continues to try to figure out exactly what Hiram Lodge is up to with all his various purchases, but he can't get anybody to go on the record. Archie leaks to him that Hiram bought Pop Tate's, and he tries to talk to Pop Tate and get him to go on the record, but Pop Tate asks him to not tell anyone because he promised his mother that he wouldn't sell we would keep the diner in the family, and his mother's still alive. So basically he asked Jughead to keep it a secret, and Jughead, because he considers Pop one of his friends, can't tell it. Doesn't tell it. FP volunteers to tell him that he did work for Hiram Lodge in trashing the drive-in to drive down the value. But before he can do that, someone calls Jughead saying that he has information about Hiram Lodge. As it turns out, Jughead does a midnight meeting with a bus driver at the Riverdale bus station who turns out to be Smithers, who basically tells Jughead that he did arrange a lot of travel, and he knows that Hiram Lodge had been making a lot of calls out to the prison. After the prison, which leads Jughead back to FP to ask if he knows somebody on the inside. They find someone on the inside, and he tells them exactly what's going on. Jughead tries to write an article for it to blow the lid off of it, but Mr. Weatherby will not publish it in the school paper. And obviously the Register won't look at it and won't publish it because Hiram Lodge owns it. Meanwhile, the Lodges are trying to get Fred Andrews to run for mayor. Archie doesn't like the idea because he doesn't want his dad involved as heavily as he is in all the Lodge's various shady dealings and whatnot. Which kind of puts him and Veronica at odds because Veronica's parents are trying to get her to convince Fred to run, and Archie doesn't want him to. Ultimately, what happens is because Jughead's about to publish the article and the warden calls, and the warden finds out about the conversation he and FP had with the inmate at the prison, Hiram decides to go ahead and tell Fred and Archie exactly what's going on. And what's going on is there's going to be a for-profit prison built on the land that Southside High is on. Basically, the entire South Side is going to become a prison complex. The idea being you build the prison, and then you build housing for all the people who are going to work at the prison. And it's a for-profit prison because, of course, it is. Now, on to... God, why do I keep yawning during these? Anyway, on to the Coopers. Basically, Polly comes back with the babies because it turns out Clifford Blossom had a secret will which wasn't to be read until after the official investigation into his death was over. And pretty much everything's been divided in half. Nana Rose continues to own the house where Cheryl and her mother are staying. Penelope gets Thornhill, which of course is charred rubble, and the money for that half the rest of the money for that half goes to Cheryl. It was supposed to be split between Cheryl and Jason, but obviously Jason's dead, so Cheryl gets it all. The other half goes to anyone in Riverdale who can prove they have Blossom blood, which of course includes Betty, Polly, and the twins. And possibly Chick, but Chick seems kind of reluctant to take that blood test. Also, Hal asks for a divorce because he says he's had enough, but Alice finds out that it's really just so he doesn't have to share the money with her. Share any money he might get from the Blossom estate with her. Tony and Cheryl seem to be getting closer. Oh, and just one big shock is when somebody walks in who basically looks like Clifford Blossom is back from the dead. Turns out he's not. He has a twin brother named Claudius. And he comes back in there and sticks around for a while, and pretty much it looks like he and Penelope have something in mind to take down the Lodges, but Penelope tells him Nana Rose first, then Cheryl. So something's up there. No idea what, but something. Anyway, Chick continues to be creepy as fuck, and to the point where Betty and Polly suspect he might do something to the babies when he takes them for a walk. He doesn't. And he's got this photograph of the Cooper family that he's periodically, first he cuts off Hal, then he cuts off Polly when Polly decides to leave. Betty, however, manages to get some dental floss out of, she tries to get Kevin to get him to talk, but he gets suspicious and Kevin's out. And then Betty gets some dental floss from his bathroom and sends that out for a DNA test, and yeah, nope, Chick's not related to them. Or at the very least, may not be related to Allison. Chick's not related to them. So, yeah, it looks like even if Alice is his mother, Hal's not his father. So, he wouldn't be entitled to the Blossom money. And the question is, who the hell is he? So, that's everything there. More stuff moving forward. Oh, right. To get ahead of the Junkhead story, Hiram tells Archie and Fred what's going on. Fred tells him he's out, he's not going to run, which leads him to do a quick course correction and put Hermione up for the mayor's position. So the question is what's going to happen after that? Because somebody's going to run against her, and it might possibly be Fred. We'll see, because just before he left, he got a whole pile of campaign buttons. Nobody said he could run. Nobody said he still could run. Nobody said he couldn't. He just would be running against the lodges. So that's how that works. But Archie, finally, more or less signs a blood oath with Hiram Lodge to stay loyal to the Lodge family. So great. Well done, Archie, you idiot. Oh, again, deeper and deeper with each episode. 7 episodes to go. See you after the next one. This episode, primary colors. Oh, God, there's a lot happening here, so I may forget some stuff, because there's a lot that happens. I'm going to blaze through all this as fast as I possibly can, because there's a lot. Veronica decides to run for student body president with Betty as her co-president, but with word coming out about the Sodale Project in the prison, Ethel starts a campaign of harassment against Veronica. First, she throws a shake in her face, and Veronica tries to get her dad to give Ethel's dad a job offer. That doesn't work out. Later, when she's announcing her candidacy, Ethel shows up with a flyer with all the information about all the double dealing and stuff that Veronica knew about. And and this is after Veronica managed to get Josie a celebrity endorsement, because it turns out Josie's the one who told Ethel about all this. So Josie's not in Veronica's camp either. And neither is Betty. Betty drops out of being Veronica's running mate after that. Jughead, after Archie is given a notice to give to Jughead that Southside High is about to be demolished. Jughead decides to start with a hunger strike and then a protest when he and the younger serpents chain themselves to the school. Ultimately, it doesn't work because Hiram has Archie and the wrestling team go out and forcibly remove them, not getting involved with adults harassing kids. Kids harassing kids is a different story. So the protest goes through and the school gets demolished. This inspires Jughead to pretty much do the one thing that he can. He doesn't want Riverdale High to go the way of Southside High, so he decides to run for student body president against Veronica. I should mention that Reggie's also in the running, but we'll see what happens there. In addition, Mary Andrews, Archie's mom, comes back to help Fred try to get out of the contract with the lodges. Originally, it doesn't seem to be going very well. However, more or less, Archie puts a condition on Mr. Lodge. He says, I'll do this, but you need to let my dad out of his contract free and clear, which is what happens. So Fred is out of the contract with the lodges, no harm, no foul, and so on and so forth. And the ultimate thing that this leads up to is that the contract was the one thing keeping Fred from running for mayor against Hermione, which I thought was going to happen. Meanwhile, at the Blossom House, things start getting more intense. Tony becomes a member of the River Vixens, and Cheryl throws a celebratory sleepover with her, Veronica, Betty, Josie, and Tony. And during that time, it seems like Nana Rose falls down the stairs, but she's pretty sure she's been Cheryl's pretty sure she's been pushed because her uncle Her uncle is now wearing her father's old pajamas, and there's been some certain types of tea with certain herbs that they've been having Nana Rose drink, and it turns out it paralyzed her and all that. So she's still in the hospital and all that. When Cheryl starts asking the doctor to bring her back, Penelope hauls her off to the Sisters of Mercy, where it's not just, making her say she's lost her mind. It looks like there's going to be gay conversion therapy going on, too. Lovely. So, yeah, so Cheryl was already cracked before. Now she's going to get fucking broken. So, wow, yeah, intense. Things are definitely ramping up. Just the serial killer was only the beginning. Who knows what's going to happen next? We're going to move on to the next episode. Okay, next episode, The Noose Titans, and boy does it ever. Let's start off with Cheryl. Cheryl is, of course, with the Sisters of Mercy, and pretty much is, undergoing gay conversion therapy along with all the other medieval crap that presumably Polly was put under, including gaslighting and a bunch of other bullshit. Nana Rose heads out to... Nana Rose, who's left by Penelope all by herself, in a regular chair as opposed to her wheelchair, crawls across the floor to call Tony at the school and tell her where she is. She's able to get out that she's with the sisters, but unfortunately Claudius manages to cut off the phone line. We don't know what happened to Nana Rose after that. I'm sure we'll find out soon enough. Tony goes to Veronica. Veronica goes to Kevin, who talks about the Sisters of Quiet Mercy, that's their full name, and how they do gay conversion therapy, and how there's apparently a secret tunnel that leads from the residence block where gay boys would come out and they would have meets in the woods, which Kevin knows a lot about. Veronica and Tony and Kevin head out and get into the sneak in, and they rescue Cheryl, and yeah, Cheryl and Tony are now officially a thing. They kiss right there in front of everybody, and they manage to escape and all that, and Cheryl begins plotting her revenge. As far as Archie and his thing goes, Archie continues to get deeper and deeper. Some of the other business partners that were at the poker game with Hiram show up, and they want 25% of the Sodale project. The problem is that if Hiram gives them 25%, it's going to cause him to run the whole prison at a loss. So basically, they have to turn him down, and Archie gets all tough and all that, which is fine until, as it turns out, Adams basically shoots Andre and roughs up Archie and tells him to take the deal. And so Archie, they basically don't know what. Even Hiram is like, I have absolutely no idea what to do long term. But Archie manages to round up the rest of the Bulldogs and creates the Dark Circle now, and blows up the mobster's car. Not with them in it, but just to get the message across. And that leads Hiram to reward him with a brand new car, and to tell him that it was the very definition of short term, and they're going to be coming after it. So now the entire wrestling team is pretty much in on the damn, is now part of the mob. This is getting very, very silly very, very quickly. Like I said, deeper and deeper for Archie, but who knows what the hell's going on with that. Then there's the Coopers. Pretty much, the Coopers... have their own thing. Oh, I forgot to mention, originally, Tony ropes in Veronica and Josie to help, but when they first talk to Penelope, Penelope shows her the sketches that Cheryl's done of her and Josie, and basically points out that she was obsessed, which means that Cheryl was the one who sent the picture and the pig's heart and all that. Whether that actually was Cheryl or not, maybe not. Who knows? It could be entirely possible Penelope sent it just to put the kibosh on whatever the hell was going on there. Whatever the hell was going to go on there. So, that'll probably we'll probably see fallout from that later on down the line. Sorry, back to the Coopers. So things go from bad to worse when the car that Betty and Jughead dumped in the river, or in the swamp rather, is found. And things seem to be in there. They decide so FP tells them both to lie, tells everybody to lie low, but they go ahead and do some investigating anyway to find out what's going on. They talk to find out what's happening with the car. Kevin tells them that the car was picked up by the owner. They don't tell him that Kevin, the real reason why they say they're doing some sort of story on the environment, the car is only part of it, talking about how the swamp keeps getting used as a dumping ground and so on and so forth. Anyway, it turns out that the owner of the car claimed it, and it turns out to be the girlfriend of the guy that got killed. And then Chick, in a misguided effort to find out what she knows, goes and talks to her, and she shows up and more or less blackmails Alice and Betty for $10,000, which Betty goes and gets, but the guy from the motel where Chick was staying, who was roughing him up with a box cutter, shows up as well, and they start making noises like they're going to shows up as well, and and Alice calls Betty while she's at the bank, tells her not to come home, and basically when Betty gets back with the money, they pretty much start, you know, making noise like they're going to stay because they're from Centerville, and Centerville's apparently a dump, and they're going to stay at the Cooper house, and, you know, all keep things going like that. And then Jughead kicks in the door and shows up with the Serpents, who pretty much, you know, managed to get him to bug the hell off. Whether we've seen the last of them or not, who knows? But it was a kick-ass entrance because Jughead literally kicks in the door. After this, Alice kicks Chick out, says, "You brought danger here twice, we're done, you need to find somewhere else to live," and Chick says he'll go. And then Alice actually apologizes to the Serpents and says that she's not going to attack them anymore, and she's going to stop ragging on the South Side and start taking pride in the fact that that's where she's from. And we see her visit FP. We don't know what's going on with that, but who knows. And pretty much, yeah, that's everything. Again, stuff is ramping up. We've only got about 5 episodes to go. The next one is apparently the musical episode, Carrie the Musical. I don't know if that's a real thing, but Jesus, okay, sure, why not? As a matter of fact, Cheryl insists that she gets the lead, so because she's still Cheryl. So let's see what happens. See you in the next one. Alright, A Night to Remember. And boy, howdy is it. So, the school musical is on, and Kevin's directing Carrie the Musical. We're going to get the general stuff out of the way. Overall, the music's not bad. Not every member of this cast can sing, and apparently they decided not to let Cole Sprouse sing at all. I guess that's not really a thing for Jughead. He's sort of being the behind-the-scenes documentarian through this whole thing. But just about everybody else is in the show. And one of the big controversies is that Cheryl gets cast as Carrie by sheer demanding rather than anybody else. And the problem is that somebody... Kevin keeps getting threatening letters allegedly from the Black Hood demanding that Cheryl be recast, which ultimately he does, with her understudy being Midge. And there's actually an awful lot of forgiveness going on in here. Josie and Cheryl forgive each other. Betty and her mother forgive each other. Hal comes back and begs to be back in, and Alice and Hal reconcile, which is not great for FP when he sees Hal talking to Alice before the show. He just leaves. He doesn't come to see it. Chick shows up at the show for some reason, and yeah, pretty much everybody kind of works it out. When Archie asks Veronica to store the new car at Pembroke, and which he does, but when Hiram finds out that it's because Archie hasn't told his dad about the new car yet, he goes ahead and spills the beans in Archie's advance, which makes Fred angry, not because he has the car, but just because he was hoping that he'd be able to pick out a jalopy with Archie and help him rebuild the car himself, which, yeah. So Archie feels bad, and ultimately he reconciles with Fred after he sees that Fred is still going through with building the sets for the show, even though they're having a problem. So Archie gives the car back to Hiram and tells him, listen, I work for you and I've learned a lot for you, but don't force me, don't try to get between me and my dad, because that is a battle you will always lose. And as we've heard earlier in the season, Hiram Lodge is one of those guys that says, I never lose. So, and then Archie, gives the car back, sells a bunch of his music equipment, and goes out and buys an old jalopy from Junkyard Steve. It is, in fact, the Andrews jalopy that we've seen many times in many Archie productions and comics and so on. So that was fun to see the old Andrews jalopy get put together, old Betsy. We'll see what happens as that goes on. We might not even see it fully developed until like next season. But yeah. So the show goes on, and it gets to Carrie's big moment, and the curtain goes up, and things get reblocked, and Midge has been impaled to the set with another note from the Black Hood painted on it. So yeah, Midge might actually be dead this time. Yeah. No, the Black Hood may have returned. It might be someone else. Of course, it's probably, a second Black Hood. But somebody's picked up the torch. Not good. Oh, and one other thing. Basically, Cheryl, when she tries to get back on the show, she gets kicked out of the show because her mother didn't give permission for her to be involved. So Cheryl douses herself in blood and threatens her mother and basically says, I want to be emancipated. I want you out of this house. The house is owned by Nana Rose. I'm going to stay here with her. You and Uncle Claudius can get the fuck out. And so that looks like that's going to happen because she threatened her mother again, and she knows that she can get away with it. So yeah, wow, this is intense. The things just got escalated. A nice, fun little light episode hits you right like a freight train right at the end. So yeah, Midge may be dead, and good God. Oh, and one other thing. Chuck is actually in the musical, and yeah, pretty much he has turned over a new leaf, and everybody acknowledges that. So that's cool. They fixed Chuck. Thank God for that. So anyway, that's that episode. We're gonna move on. 4 to go. Wow. All right, back in a minute. Prisoners, which, my God, she's drunk! And an apt title if there ever was one. Mark St. Clair returns, or Nick St. Clair. I've been calling him Mark through this whole thing. It's actually Nick. Nick St. Clair returns and kidnaps Archie and holds him for ransom. Wants $1 million from Veronica. Veronica asks her parents. Her parents say they'll work on trying to figure it out because the St. Clairs are also mobsters. Excuse me. And they say they're going to work on it, but the simple fact is they don't, because Archie's not technically blood related, and they consider him expendable. So Veronica talks to Nick, and Veronica takes what cash she can find in the lodge safe, and takes it to Nick. Nick says it's not enough, and he knows there's no way she's going to get enough, get the rest of it without her parents getting involved, so he insists on getting a night with her in return for Archie's release. But because Nick's a sadistic bastard, he has a webcam set up in his hotel room, which is going to feed back to a laptop where Archie's tied up. Ronnie goes in and things seem to be going in there. Archie manages to escape, runs all the way to the hotel, but no sooner does he get there than he discovers that Veronica's already roofied Nick. Oh my God. Veronica's already roofied Nick, and yeah. On the other side of the thing, Midge is in fact dead, and the Black Hood has returned. Black Hood has returned, Midge is dead, Cheryl's calling for Sheriff Keller's head on a platter, and pretty much most of the town seems to agree with him, to the point that later in the episode, yeah, the sheriff is forced to resign. And basically the way the election's going to work out, he gets his job back if Fred gets elected, but if Hermione gets elected, he's out on his ass. and he's feeling down and basically feels that if he does step down right now, maybe somebody can come in to catch the Black Hood where he failed. Now, in other news, the other confirmation the Black Hood is returned. Pretty much, the Black Hood calls Betty again and points out that Chick shouldn't be there and that he's killed before. So they wonder if maybe there's a connection between Chick and Mr. Svensson, because it turns out that Betty's brother was at the Sisters of Quiet Mercy, and Svensson worked there as a groundskeeper for a while. So they go and they look up the files, and after blackmailing the sisters into letting them look at the files with saying they're going to go to the cops, go to the FBI about their illegal gay conversion therapy. They look at it and realize that the picture that they have of Charles is not Chick. And that's where they find out that, yeah, they do some more digging up of things, and basically they confront Chick back at the house, and Chick goes for a knife, and they keep him tied up in the basement. Betty and Veronica Junkhead and Veronica go back to the place, talk to the neighbors, and pretty much, yeah, Chick claims that Charles overdosed, but it looks like he outright murdered him. And they're trying to get him to confess. The problem is, of course, is the Chick knows that they helped him hide, that they got rid of the body of what's-his-name that in there. And it turns out with that Chick was the one who killed him with the lamp. So, they call in Hal. Alice confesses to FP that, yeah, Charles was their kid, but he's dead now, and she feels rotten about it because apparently the kid showed up at some point a few years ago and wanting to reconcile, and she just slammed the door in his face, probably thinking he was selling something or something like that. So that happens, and Hal shows up, and he's all indignant and whatnot, and while he and Alice are fighting, Betty takes the gun she got from season 1 and takes Chick out, and they meet up with the Black Hood. She gives him a head start. The Black Hood chases after him, and yeah, it's probably reasonable to assume that Chick's dead, unless they go for a plot twist later. And then finally, Archie talks the other thing, getting back to the Ronnie plotline, the Ronnie and Archie plotline, Ronnie turns the tables and calls the St. Clairs and holds Nick for ransom, and they give him $1 million. They give her $1 million in cash for him. And then basically the lodges come back, and Veronica says, well, that's interesting because the St. Clairs didn't know boo about Archie's kidnapping. So, I can explain it. You can explain it to Archie. He's in your study. So he tries to explain, and basically Archie says, listen, I haven't made my bones with you. He's getting further and further in with the lodges, and tells Hirams, it's like, there's only one man I want. I want to find the Black Hood, and I will take care of him myself. Would that be enough? And he's like, yes, I would say it would. And if you need any help I can give you on your quest, I'll be there for you. So Archie's out for vengeance. He's pretty much given Hiram complete control over him. And I have no idea how the hell this is even going to come to any sort of happy ending for Archie. Oh my God. So that's where we are. We are down to 3 episodes left of season 2 of Riverdale. I'll see you in the next one. Things start really beginning to unravel now. So a new sheriff is appointed, and Archie continues his quest, and Betty begins to suspect her dad may very well be the Black Hood. Betty ropes Cheryl in for advice, and they start looking into it, and Betty keeps digging through her dad's plans, finds that his day planner schedule all had things at the same time that are generically enough they could be cover-ups for the various murders that have occurred. Also, she finds that he's still making payments for his room at the B&B where he was staying, and he opens it up, and she goes up, breaks into that room, and finds the same code book that the Black Hood used for his cipher earlier in the season. She tells her dad and she tells her family about how she left Chick. She thought there was a call to the register offices from the coroner, Alice's usual contact, but the guy they found was not Chick, but the body that was found was not Chick. But Betty's trying to cope with the fact that if Chick did wind up dead, then she's an accomplice to murder, and as she tells her family, she thinks she's okay with that. And Hal tells her he had the same kind of dark thoughts when he wasn't at home and all that. So she later Betty calls her dad. Oh yeah, we have the debate between Fred and Hermione, but that's loudly interrupted when the Black Hood shows up and starts taking pot shots at both of them. So, but it confuses the hell out of Betty because her dad actually manages to be there. Her dad is there and not up in the balcony in there. So the police are looking for it. Just before this, Junkhead tries to get. It comes out that Moose admits to the rest of the Dark Circle that Midge let slip that she was carrying on with one of the serpents. It turns out to be Fangs Fogarty, as the musical episode implied. But Jughead has footage of Fangs talking to Midge, but he already gave it to the sheriff's office, and the new sheriff isn't playing ball. And as soon as that footage shows up, Fangs gets arrested. He's held for possession of a weapon of a switchblade at school, which he holds for 24 hours, but they don't actually charge him with Midge's murder, so he has to be released. And it gets even worse because Hiram, pretty much starts paying the rest of the Dark Circle to cause problems, and they go cause shit in the South Side outside the White Worm, and Archie realizes he's lost control of the whole thing, and now Reggie's calling the shots as far as the Dark Circle is concerned. And then ultimately all this elaborates into like a huge crowd that is outraged that Fangs is getting released from jail. In fact, Joaquin returns and says he can hide Fangs out in San Junipero with him. So, yeah, just a lot of things, a lot of pressure building, and it all explodes as Jughead and the rest of the serpents try to get Fangs out through the crowd, and Reggie shows up with a gun. Archie spots him, tackles him, but the gun goes off and shoots and kills Fangs anyway. Meanwhile, Betty gets a call from her dad and calls her dad and tells her to meet her at the place where she gave her speech, just to see if maybe they need to finish this conversation and see if she can get confirmation that Hal is the Black Hood. Except if he is or not, the Black Hood has just shown up at Cheryl's front door. And that's where the episode ended. So, yeah, things are really starting to unravel out there. Veronica also gets courted by a bunch of other mob princes, more or less. And only one of them interests her with a casino, and Lodge Industries is apparently trying to go completely legit. So Hiram shoots down the idea of a partnership with them to form casinos, to build a casino in Riverdale, and Veronica decides to go ahead and does some research with former Mayor McCoy, and basically to find out how to go about doing it legally. And she does. And she's going to do it. She thought she was going to do it with the ransom money she got from the St. Clairs, but Hiram already put that into a trust that she can't touch until she's 21, after she's calmed down and been more rational. So, everything gets paid off, and Veronica's had enough of her father's shit, so she's decided to abandon her mother's campaign for mayor and shift her support over to Fred. So that's everything that's happening. Like I said, a lot of things are reaching a boiling point. I seriously doubt a lot of this stuff is going to get resolved this season. We'll see what happens in the next couple of episodes. 2 episodes left. See you in the next one. AKA all hell breaks loose in Riverdale. Alright, so first off, the Black Hood attempts to kill Cheryl. Cheryl manages to escape and get to her archery stuff and basically starts emulating Speedy from Arrow. She manages to shoot him in the shoulder and he runs off. She tells She tells Betty he's heading for the house, and Betty gets there, and there's blood all over the house and everything. She cleans it up and heads out and everything. And long story short, Hal is the Black Hood. Apparently, even his father was the Riverdale Reaper who killed the Conways, and Hal, when he was a kid, was brainwashed into making sure that the surviving Conway kid pointed the finger at the wrong man. As a matter of fact, it goes even further than that, is that apparently Great-Grandpappy Cooper was the one who killed Great-Grandpappy Blossom, not the other way around like we've been told all these years, that we were told last season. Betty and Alice managed to subdue him and knock him out, which is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because even though the riots get quelled and all that, even though the riot still goes on, I'll get back to what happens, why that's a good thing and a bad thing that Hal got caught. So, as it turns out, Reggie and Archie, it was not an accidental gunshot that killed Fangs. It was, in fact, Mrs. Clump who had a gun in the crowd and shot Fangs. That's what happened. Veronica finds her and gets her turned into the police. But that doesn't stop the riot. Basically, there's a huge hunt out for Reggie. Kevin and Moose and Archie have a confrontation with the Serpents at Riverdale High. They want to burn the place down, but he manages to talk him out of it. Or more accurately, what happens is just they're about to go at it. Mr. Weatherby shows up. What the hell do you think you're doing in my school? That was a great bit. So that breaks that up, and the Serpents regroup at the White Worm. Archie gets a call from Pops. From Pop Tate. Reggie is hiding out at Pop's. They go down there to meet up with him, but it seems like the Serpents have tracked him down and they're all lurking outside, except when Archie calls Jughead, Jughead says they're all at the White Worm, which means that it's actually the Ghoulies that are back in town. And it gets even worse from there. Jughead gets a call from an old friend, Penny Peabody, who basically has kidnapped Tony with the help of the Ghoulies, and pretty much says, you have a choice. The Serpents can leave tonight, or meet us in Pickens Park at dawn tomorrow, and we're going to finish this out once and for all, because she wants control of the South Side drug trade. Jughead takes that back. The Serpents all vote to fight. Jughead tries to talk his dad out of it, but he's not able to. The Ghoulies show up back when the Ghoulies show up in there, and coming to the rescue is Sheriff Keller, Fred, and FP. So they all come to the rescue at the last minute, and that takes care of that. So as FP leaves to rally more troops, Jughead looks at everything he's accumulated over the case, and he puts it all together that Hiram hired Penny and the Ghoulies to try to wipe the Serpents out because he just hasn't been able to do anything else about them. And Jughead provides a counter offer. He'll serve himself up to Penny and the Ghoulies if there's no war in the morning. Well, he does, and the Ghoulies kick the ever-loving shit out of him. And Penny says there's going to be a war anyway, so who cares? It tells Jughead that it's going to be a futile gesture. Meanwhile, Fred and Archie get back home, and as Fred's getting ready to get in the shower, Archie spots that the back door's open, and he looks around, and lo and behold, the Black Hood is there. And except this is going on at the same time Hal's confessing to Betty and Alice. So, the Black Hood gets in there. Fred manages to subdue him, but the Black Hood shoots Fred again. But fortunately, this time, Fred's wearing a bulletproof vest that Keller provided before they went in to deal with the Ghoulies at Pops. So, even though Hal's been arrested and confessed to being the Black Hood, there's a second Black Hood out there. And ultimately, it gets, the last thing that happens is that Jughead calls Betty and more or less tells her goodbye, right before he goes to meet up with the Ghoulies and Penny. And she calls FP, and FP heads out there, and everybody else shows up, and yeah, Jughead has had 90 kinds of hell beaten out of him. And just like he did with Penny, his serpent tattoo's been carved off of his shoulder. So, yeah. Yeah, that's where we stand. All hell's broken loose, but there's still another war coming, so we'll see what happens as we get to the final episode of this season of Riverdale. See you in a minute. And so here we are, the final episode of Season 2 of Riverdale. And yeah, it picks up after everything has died down. And pretty much Jughead lives, hooray, and Fangs lives, hooray. Unfortunately, things aren't that great. Apparently the rumble went down at Pickens Park and the Serpents were almost completely annihilated. Some defected, some left town. Sunnyside Trailer Park almost burned completely to the ground, although Jughead and his father's trailer survived. What few serpents are homeless started hiding at the White Worm. And pretty much Veronica starts making machinations against Hiram Lodge. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me get back to that. What happened? Cheryl gets Nana Rose named as her legal guardian and goes to deliver the letter of notice to where Penelope and Claudius are staying, which is on one of the barns on the Blossom estate. Because while Thornhill is burnt, the house is burned down, the estate's still intact. She finds that the Blossoms are making deals with Hiram Lodge. She reports this back to Veronica. Veronica uses it as leverage against her father. Her father just does all this other, Hiram Lodge is Hiram Lodge. And, Veronica manages to convince her mother to help, and she says, if you want to take on your father, you're going to need leverage over him. And basically she reveals that there's one property on the south side that Hiram doesn't own, which is the White Worm itself, but he's in negotiations. So, Veronica decides to make a play to get the worm so her father doesn't control everything. But first she's got to get her money out of the trust, which she manages to do. Which she manages to maneuver with former Mayor McCoy's help. She then takes the money and she buys the bar, but she finds a better play after Hiram fires F.P. Jones from working at the chocolate shop. She realizes that, the chocolate shop is like the last place in Riverdale where she and her friends can go, so she offers to make a trade with Hiram. She'll give him the worm if she gives him Pops. Well, Hiram throws some other things in there saying, this will be the last thing you get from me. No allowance, no credit cards, no trust, no nothing. Your entire legacy will be gone. And she'll be like, fine, it's all blood money anyway. So, Veronica is now the owner of the chocolate shop, with plans to open up the basement, which used to be a speakeasy for a cabaret kind of thing, and she asks to make sure that both Northsiders and Southsiders alike are involved. Backtracking a little bit. Basically, before the worm gets purchased, Hiram's making a play to get all the other serpents out of town, out of the way, by having the place raided by his new pet sheriff. And but fortunately, Cheryl finds out about that when she tells Penelope she's going to the worm to meet up with Tony, and Penelope tells her that the raid's coming. So Archie, Cheryl, and Jughead, and Tony, and all the serpents work to get all the serpents off to the north side, where Fred has opened up his home to them, which gets him a lot of votes for the mayoral election, as I'm sure you can imagine. Unfortunately, it proves not to be enough. Hermione wins the election by about 200 votes, so it was close. Whether she's going to be able to keep going, what's going to happen with her, who knows? Because the last thing we see of her is she's shaking hands with Fred, congratulating him on a great campaign. So who knows? She might be around to throw a monkey wrench into Hiram's plans later. Oh, right. So the second Black Hood is found. It turns out to have been Tallboy who was doing it, one of the second in command of the Serpents who was against Jughead's leadership. He was killed in altercations with the police. Yeah, that's convenient, isn't it? Betty, on the other, Betty is struggling with the knowledge that Hal was the Black Hood, and basically she's convinced that she might be evil, but everyone else is trying to work with her to not that. She goes and sees her father and tells him goodbye, and he insists that she knows she'll fall like he did. Polly comes home and Alice is adrift, so Polly makes a play for the farm, which is totally not a cult. Not at all. Not at all. And, there's another thing that happens. Principal Weatherby tries to have all the South Side students bust to Seaside High, which is like 2 hours away, just to get them out of Riverdale High. But Archie gets an idea and borrows as many serpent jackets as they can, so a whole mess of students show up in the hallway wearing the serpent jackets, and pretty much Archie says, and we're ready to walk out if you want. He says, anyone who walks out better keep walking because they'll be expelled. And Archie says, well, I mean, I know you're a good man, you don't discriminate, and if you do, then fine, expel me, because I don't want to be a part of that. And pretty much, Weatherby relents. The Southside students can stay. Also, the student council election was interesting. Reggie and Josie dropped out. Veronica dropped out as the front runner. Junkhead and Betty dropped out, which Archie ran against Ethel, and Archie won handily as the new student council president for a while. I'll get to that in a minute. And then ultimately, once everything was done, he went to see Hiram. He went to see Hiram and told him that he's going to be watching him and find a way to prove that everything he's done has been illegal and take the town back. So Hiram's won for now, but Archie's going to do it. But Hiram's not one to take this lying down. So basically, he and his new inner council, which consists of Penny Peabody, Penelope and Claudius Blossom, the leader of the Ghoulies, and the sheriff, pretty much have other plans have bigger plans than just the prison. The prison is only the beginning, apparently, for the South Side and the entirety of Riverdale. And basically, everybody has concerns about Veronica and her meddling friends. And he says the plans are in motion to remove the glue that binds them together. And that glue is Archie. He has Archie arrested for one of the murders that Andre committed while they were up at the lake house. So yeah, that's where it ends. Another cliffhanger with Archie going to jail. So overall, yeah, I'm kind of sorry that I decided to give this season a miss. It proved to be much more tightly written. Everybody seemed to be a lot more in character. The show seems to know what it is and where it's going. It did a few really fun things. It has some good lines. It has some great lighter episodes, some great darker episodes. So yeah, now it appears that season 3 will be Archie versus Hiram, and we'll see where things go from there. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention. Yeah, F.P. Jones now officially retires as leader of the Serpents and turns leadership of the gang over to Jughead. And one of the first things that happen is that Cheryl joins the gang, and is actually the only Serpent who naturally gets a red leather jacket to go with it. So Jughead does later ask Betty to join as well, but she's given some time to consider. So, pretty much, yeah, that's where we stand. Hiram Lodge technically wins, but he knows there's resistance to it, so we're going to see what'll happen in Season 3. I probably will go ahead and watch Season 3 as it airs. Maybe. Tell me what you guys think. Did you like the individual looks at everything from the first season, or do you like this whole binge watch format? Let me know what you like. Riverdale Season 2, really good. I appreciate it. I like it a lot more than Season 1. I'm glad things are kind of being a little more cohesive and everything seems to be relevant to what's going on. So, yeah, that's Riverdale Season 2. This has been the Riverdale Vlogs, and I'll see you in Season 3 in whatever format. Bye!